So False Positive is a movie on Hulu. It's a horror film. Kind of like so I said in my review, it's not really like straight up horror. It's like psychological thriller with like horror elements, I guess. A lot of people comparing False Positive to Rosemary's Baby, saying it's Rosemary's Baby, but kind of updated for 2020, 2021, that kind of thing, right?
Very deliberate in that respect, but yes.
Totally. That's what they're trying to do. Yeah. They're wearing it on their sleeve, for sure.
Yeah, but not like a remake or a reboot or anything like that.
It's not a remake. Yeah. So like, Rosemary's Baby, it's like the neighbors and everything. This movie is very different from that whole plot. But I mean, the basic vibe of it is kind of calling on, it's like paying homage a bit. So this premiered at Tribeca just last week. Hulu has already released it. It was directed by John Lee. And John Lee, who you might recognize that name, he did a few episodes of Broad City with this film's star and co-screenwriter Ilana Glazer. They both did the screenplay together. The film also stars Justin Theroux, Pierce Brosnan, Sophia Bush, a few more folks. And the plot of it, I should also mention this is A24, has the rights to this movie. So the plot of it here, it's a lean movie. It's about an hour and a half, and we have this young woman who is married, and she's on the verge of having it all. Great career, loving husband, but she's kind of feeling like, that something's missing. They've been trying to have a kid, but they're having fertility issues. So her husband, played by Justin Theroux, tells her, well, look, he's a surgeon. So he's like, the guy who taught me in medical school, he's this amazing fertility doctor. So they go to him, and he actually may have a solution. And it looks like their dreams are coming true. It looks like they're actually going to have kids, not just one kid, but maybe more than one because of the IDF that they're doing, or IVF, I should say. So she's pregnant. And then things start to go a little strange. She starts to suspect that the circumstances behind her pregnancy, and perhaps there's a little bit of gaslighting going on. Perhaps there are some unseen methods of what is going on with her pregnancy in general that she can't quite seem to understand. And that's kind of this movie. I don't want to say anything else. It's very eerie. It's a little bit Stepford-wise, and it sort of opens with a shot that's kind of promising something bloodier and splashier, but that's not the majority of this movie by any means. And first thing I'll say about this movie, the two things I like about it the most, I love Ilana Glazer in this movie. She's so good. She's so expressive. She's so I just empathize and totally understand what she wants, why she wants it, and I was always on her side, always trying to figure out what was going on right alongside of her. And I think she's really effective in this. And I think Pierce Brosnan as this sort of like shady, shadowy fertility doctor, really, really fun performance. It's not an ultimately amazing movie. I think that it's just kind of like, it probably could have been a short film, honestly, because there's a lot of padding that it has. And I was kind of just waiting for it to get to the good stuff. When it got to the good stuff, I was certainly impressed, and it had a final shot that will not leave my memory anytime soon. That is 100% for sure. But what about you, Will Ashton? What did you think about False Positive? Are you positive or negative?
I think overall I'm positive on it. I did have some expectations for this going in, just because I did enjoy what I've seen of Broad City. I haven't watched more than a handful of episodes, I'll admit, but I do know that Ilana Glazer at like the prime of the show's fame was like hyped up to be like this big comedy star. I think there was I think something happened with the show where it seemed to kind of get like maybe oversaturated in the public's view to the point where I feel like people kind of got annoyed with it after a while. I don't know if that's true to say, but one thing that really I found admirable about her career is that like this project was announced like basically I think like a month after Broad City ended. It was just like her immediate follow-up project in a way that it felt like, okay, this is going to be a very clear departure from what we expect from her, like the like Yaz Queen persona, where it's definitely like everything about her character in this movie is deliberately like the opposite of Ilana from Broad City. Like her hair is straightened, she's very business oriented, she's like very collected, very like aware of like what she wants, very goal driven and stuff like that. And I do appreciate this project, both as you're suggesting as a star and writer, as a like clear departure for her, like exploring like something that's very clear to her, like in her voice, but also doing something that stylistically is a lot different. Same with John Lee, who, in addition to working on Broad City, as you mentioned, is one of the co-creators of Wonder Chosen, which is a show that I don't know how it holds up nowadays, but I think it's a very inspired, clever show that it definitely, I think, hits its targets very well when it's good. And what I find admirable about the film from their creative perspective is that, that's Broad City and Wonder Chosen are very like energetic, like let's see how broad and big we can get with these concepts kind of shows. And this project, in comparison, is very restrained, like very, honed in terms of like how it's handling style and tone and mood, at least for like the first hour, 70 minutes or so, in a way that I found pretty admirable. But at the same time, I do agree with you that I think it does feel very at peace with its influences. Like it does feel like it's hard to not think about Rosemary's Baby, obviously, but also like very much owns a lot of easy comparisons to like Ari Aster's recent films, even having the same cinematographer, who I think does a really nice job in this film. I think cinematography wise, it's some of the best aspects of it. But also, I mean, obviously, like some of Jordan Peele's recent efforts, both as a filmmaker and as a producer, this film tends to follow his influence and in a way that something I've noticed about movies that have been inspired by his works is that they tend to focus more, I think, on the concept than maybe the characters and in terms of like developing like what the idea is. But I feel like with this movie, I understood what it's doing. I think a lot of it's very thoughtful in its approach, but I also feel like I never fully got an understanding of who these characters were beyond like the basic log line. And I felt like that's what held it back, as you're suggesting, is that like it plays out in a sort of predictable fashion, like especially if you have seen Rosemary's Baby, like you know where this is going to go. It's more just the dread of waiting for that moment or that stuff to happen. And I think that's fine, but I feel like what I find frustrating about the film is that like I feel like it's kind of caught between where it's like it is very execution focused. It's very heavily focused on, like I said, delivering the tone and mood and style and that sense of dread. But it does hint at like some meatier like social commentary in terms of like gender expectations and just general manipulation, like you said, gaslighting. But it doesn't feel like it ever like fully pushes the social commentary in a way that I felt like could have made this a little bit more meaty, a little bit more like thoughtfully produced in a way that I found could be like more to like wrestle with, I guess. I think in terms of like how it's executed and how it plays out, I think it's generally pretty well done. I found myself intrigued by it throughout, but by the end, I did kind of find myself wishing it was just like maybe a little bit better than ultimately was. But at the same time, I don't think it's like bad or poorly made.
Yeah, I enjoyed it for the most part too. I think we're basically on the same page. What excites me is just like I like the idea of Ilana Glazer coming back to movies, and we haven't seen her in a film since Rough Night. That was years and years ago, and she wasn't, she was not top billed or anything. She was like one of the supporting characters.
Yeah, the best friend.
That wasn't a great movie. Yeah, she was one of the side characters for sure. And I'm really excited. Have you heard about the new show that she's in, the After Party?
No.
So there's a show coming to Apple TV Plus, and it was announced last year. And I think it's like 8 episodes, and it could be coming toward the end of this year. She's in it. Also in this movie, I think top builder Tiffany Haddish, Sam Richardson, actually, Zoe Chow, Ben Schwartz, Ike Barinholtz. I think Dave Franco is in it too. Sure. And this is Lord and Miller. They're the showrunners. Because they were going to make. This was years and years ago. They were going to make a comedy about like a high school reunion, like back in like 2013 or something. And then Sony was going to make a movie with it. But yeah, I think like it just kind of got messed up, but then it turned into this, which is called The After Party, which is a show.
Okay.
And so I'm stoked about it. I think that has the makings of being like, they've already finished filming it too. So I think that's going to be coming out like possibly later this year.
Okay.
But like, I just say that, because I'm optimistic about Glazer's career. I think she has so much untapped potential. I see so much of it in this movie. So I feel more kind to it than negative, because I think that it does take some risks. I think that, comparing it to Rosemary's Baby, you can certainly give it a little bit of like slack, like, all right, it's not super original and it doesn't have like the best like middle section. And I think the dread of it is okay. I think the body horror of it is really fun.
Yeah, I wouldn't use fun, but I do think it's very effective.
Fun, there's a better word for it, sure, I guess.
It's like unnerving, like not having autonomy over your body is just inherently very, very scary, at least to me. And I think this movie is very good about that stuff.
Right. It's pretty preachy about, like they kind of hit the nail on the head pretty often about like, this is a movie about female agency. This is a movie like, that's the stuff that it really wants to get across from Rosemary's Baby, of like a woman not having control of her body and then taking that to its extreme. To me, that's pretty, successful in doing that sort of thing. I think the production value of it is just not super competent. And I think that's what it comes down to.
I kind of disagree, I feel like, because I really like how appropriately sterile the like doctor's environment is. Like, it doesn't feel like out of place, but feels...
It's lazy, though, because it's hyping too many other movies. That's why I'm just sort of like, it doesn't have an identity of its own.
And that's what, that's the root of my issue with it. But I don't think that's a fault of the production design, in my opinion.
I think it is. I think that they're just trying to like capture the same mood from those movies, and that's where it goes from like homage to just sort of being like, maybe competence not the right word, but just like, individualistic or unique or just doing its own thing,
Yeah. I mean, I feel like one issue I do have with the movie is that at times, like, if it wasn't produced by A24, I feel like it's a movie that's trying to be an A24 film in a way that, like, I kind of mean as a criticism, even though I do like or even love a lot of the A24 movies. It feels like it's trying to be reminiscent of a lot of other horror movies, like I said, including Ari Aster's films and Jordan Peele's films, in a way that I feel like you said, like, I think that robs the movie of some of its individuality in a way that, in some ways is impossible, because, like, obviously it is supposed to be commenting on Rosemary's Baby and stuff. Like, the comparisons there are unavoidable, but also, like I said, like, it just doesn't have quite of its own style and tone to really, I feel like, sink in deeper than it could, given the subject matter.
I gotta say, I never really, like, I keep forgetting that it's A24. It just doesn't have that same like level of craft. Like, I don't know, like, when I think of, like, A24 horror, I'm thinking of stuff like Hereditary and Midsommar, Ari Aster, I guess.
Same cinematographer as those films. So, and I think the cinematography, like I said, I think is really good for the most part. I think there are a lot of creative shots here. Like, I love all the, like, dual mirror stuff. Like, I think that's really cool. I like all, like, the upside down stuff.
Yeah, I want to give credit to Pavel Pogorelski. I can never pronounce his last name, Pogorelski.
Sure, I didn't even try.
I think that I'm conflicted because, like, I agree and I disagree. I think parts of this movie are where I'm like, oh yeah, that is the same guy, right? That's the guy who gave us, the cliffside sequence in Midsommar, But I don't know, something about this movie, I guess because I keep just thinking about what happens in the middle of it. So much is just like some really boring staging to me. Like, it's just very, I don't know.
But do you think that's the directing, though?
I don't know. I mean, it's hard to say. That's why I'm kind of like, I feel a little bit all over the place. I don't know if it's just, to me though, I think that like the shooting of it isn't that interesting. And I don't know if that's because the director or like the screenplay just doesn't have a lot of interesting moments to speak of. It's a lot of just Ilana Glazer, being like suspicious of everybody in her life. And it's just like a sequence of scenes that I'm just like, it's the same point being made over and over again.
Right.
And I don't know. I just, until you get to the final act, that's where I think that the direction of it and the cinematography of it are interesting, and although I'll say there's like a little bit of a fight sequence that I was like, fine. It wasn't that interesting.
Yeah. I guess I was accrediting that more to the direction, given that like John Lee comes from a primarily TV background, obviously a lot of like comedy sitcom stuff, that the staging in those scenes, because like you're saying, like in the middle it's a lot of like people sitting down and talking to each other, and those scenes aren't particularly inventive or unique in terms of their visual approach, but there are some scenes in there that I think are visually very creative. Like there's like a scene where it's like half lit in like shadow and half lit like with like the like mirror and like the wall, where it's like I don't know like what I can really say without giving anything away, but I feel like the visual approach of it, and I credit this to cinematography, is like pretty cool, or it's like eerie in the right way that's trying to be eerie. And I mean, I don't think it's like A plus. I don't think it's on par with his Ari Aster stuff, but you can tell, in my opinion, that this is a very smart, creative, competent cinematographer involved. And I think his influence definitely pushes this up in a way that helps avoid general mediocrity.
I mean, the things that I like about it, I guess, are like some of the writing is fun, or at least like some of the writing is clever. And I like certain things of like the way she's gaslit, like how repetition is used in this movie to be like the whole mommy brain thing.
Yeah, I was
like,
about to say,
they find really unique ways to get that stuff across. I mean, when it feels like a TV show, it's fine. Like it's a bit of like a TV movie struggling to be an A24 horror movie in a way. Not disparaging TV movies, but just in terms of like low budget kind of, low stakes, that kind of thing.
I kind of got like a Tales from the Crypt vibe, sort of, almost at times, like a more toned down Tales from the Crypt at times.
I could see that,
but like it's not like Twilight Zone-ish. It's almost, but not really. But it's like it's not as heightened as like a Tales from the Crypt. So like somewhere in between, I guess.
Yeah, ultimately, I came out of this liking it more than I didn't. I'm a B-. I think that what's good about it is so good that it kind of overshadows some of my biggest disappointments, as we've already kind of said. And this movie does get a lot of credit from me for just the boldness of its ending and just a lot of like, I do think that it makes its point. It's not like this movie is confused about what it is, or it's not like this movie it's just a little bit too long for what it is. And I think that it makes its point a little bit too often, but I think the whole point of the movie is good. And Glazer is good. It's a good performance, and I think that she has a good impact on the story. It's just, the predictability, I think, is what keeps this from being better than it should have been. I think that too many people are going to see what's going on here. And I think we didn't mention it too much, but some of the editing felt a little off to me as well. And I guess that does kind of go in with like the pacing of it, of just like never quite feeling like it's moving at a consistent energy. So just a B- from me, but a respectable B-. I'm glad I saw it.
Yeah, I guess I'm about there. Like I'm like a low B- on it, and I agree that like I don't mind the length. I think it's appropriately like 90 something minutes. I just kind of wish it was a little bit meatier, like you said. Like if it is going to follow a somewhat familiar template, have a little bit more like thematic depth. I feel like I think it has a lot to say, but I just feel like it takes a lot of like kind of simple routes to get there. And like you say, it gets kind of repetitive after a point because it's so focused on its execution and its concept that I feel like the characters end up a bit lacking or a bit like two-dimensional by accident. So I think it's like kind of frustrating because like it feels like it's almost on the verge of being like good, maybe even like very good. And as it is right now, I think it's like decent to fine. Like I said, I think I appreciate what it's doing. There is a shot near the end. It's not the final shot, but there is one near the end that I think is really good in a way. I'm like, well, where's this movie been? Like, why isn't the movie like on this level throughout? Because it's like this, like if it was like this throughout, it'd be like amazing. But as it is, I think it's fine. Like I like you said, I think I'm glad I saw it. I admire Ilana Glazer for doing something that's like very different than Broad City in a way that I think is effective. But at the same time, I feel like it's missing a few key ingredients to really make this thing pop.
Yeah, I think I kind of mentioned it. The thriller aspect, I think that's what I wanted more of. I wanted it to have more like suspense, more tension, to break things up a bit. There's just not a lot of that at all. Another movie I was kind of thinking of actually after seeing this was Run, the other Hulu film we talked about earlier this year, where I think like what makes that film like engaging throughout is some of the tension, some of the like, how is she going to get out of this? This movie doesn't really have a lot of that stuff. It really is just sort of like, this scene happens and this scene happens. You get a little information here, a little information here. It just doesn't have any of that fun, like, the thrill of the chase, like that kind of stuff. And yeah, I guess for me, it drags it down a bit, but glad we still both kind of enjoyed it to a point.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking more of Horror Squirrel from last year, because that's another film that's like a comedian kind of doing like a thriller, almost a horror movie with a director that's not traditionally a horror filmmaker, and having like in that film, it's kind of going for like almost like something kind of more like surrealist, I guess. And with this, like it kind of verges on that towards the end in a way that feels almost sort of abrupt. But I feel like they have kind of like similar strengths and similar weaknesses at the same time.
All right, well, that is False Positive. You can watch it right now on Hulu. It is just 92 minutes long. Thank you so much for listening to our show. Be sure to subscribe to Cinemaholics on your favorite podcast app of choice or find us on YouTube. See you all next time.